All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Gibson, you have read the testimony from other witnesses and heard some of it today. Do those economic estimates of impacts from digging up even more oil and gas from public lands seem realistic to you? And why or why not?
Thank you, Dr. Dexter, for the question. No, they do not. And I'll just say quite simply that we've seen this movie before, and that in 2017 and 2018, there were pretty exaggerated cost estimates as to what could be gleaned from the auctioning of leases in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge in the billions. And what resulted from that auction was less than 1% of what was originally put on the table.
Thank you. And what evidence do we have that renewables lead to lower energy prices for consumers? It's been refuted here this morning. I just want to hear from you on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, every year, there's increasingly mounting empirical evidence that renewables are our economic future. They're driving economic growth. In the top 12 states in which renewables have penetrated the grid more than anywhere else, 10 of those states, prices are less for consumers. People don't have to pay as much on their energy bills. The proof's in the pudding.
Okay. And if we meet our energy needs with renewable energy, how will that impact our economy?
Overall, positively. I mean, the economic benefits are tremendous in terms of consumer savings, industry, development, jobs, manufacturing, sales, as well as we will lead the world in energy innovation and get ahead of our competitors such as in China.
And I'm just going to add to that as someone who does care for folks who are impacted by toxic fumes and other smoke exposures, that we know that the exposure to those substances in the air absolutely impact our health, and the dramatic impacts of adverse health outcomes need to be factored into these economic modelings. I think that we'll move on to public health now. We pursue at this point, or we're discussing whether we pursue a transition to clean renewable energy. And Ms. Gibson, can you speak to how continuing to prop up the oil and gas industry in the name of energy dominance could increase public health risks and affect the well-being of communities across the country?
Well, I would say, Dr. Dexter, you probably know more than most, but dramatically it increases the likelihood of premature death, of cardiovascular disease, of respiratory illnesses. And I would invite anybody, including esteemed members of this committee, to come take a trip of Cameron Parish, Louisiana, and talk to the multi-generational fishermen that live there, who we represent, whose families have been impacted by the LNG facilities that they're building on top of their communities, and the impacts it has had on their family, the very real health impacts that it's had on these people's families and lives.
I also want to ask whether you believe that NEPA is the barrier to expanding clean energy infrastructure and development.
No, NEPA is not the barrier. NEPA is not a permitting statute. I know it's often the scapegoat in a lot of conversations with NEPA. In fact, if used correctly, can increase efficiency of the build out of infrastructure.
Excellent, thank you. And in our last few minutes, Ms. Gibson, can you please briefly describe the work the Southern Environmental Law Center does on the ground for communities impacted by natural disasters?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that the most recent example that comes to mind, unfortunately, is what happened in Western North Carolina when we were hit by Hurricane Helene. Our organization worked directly with communities on the ground. Solar, I should add, was absolutely integral to supporting those communities and providing power when gas and fossil went offline after the hurricane hit. And our own staff members are members of these communities that lived through this horrible, horrific, extreme weather event. And right now, there's fires burning in North Carolina, South Carolina, New Jersey, and we're, of course, seeing an increased rise of weather events across the country, and we need to address these issues, and we need to address them now.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair. I yield back.